Hi everyone, I've gotten quite a few questions today about the closing entry, so I wanted to post everything to those of you who are still working tonight after I log off in a little bit. What I want to encourage you to do, okay, is to use formulas, even if you're finishing up the adjusted trial balance, use formulas now to make that post-closing trial balance and those closing entries a little bit more automatic, excuse me. So on your post-closing trial balance, you're only going to have those permanent accounts. We're going to close out the temporary accounts, the revenue accounts, the expense accounts, the dividends accounts. Okay. What you're going to keep is you're going to keep whatever you had in your adjusted trial balance in the debit column is going to be what you have in your post-closing trial balance in the debit column. The same for the credit column. So I just made the debits equal the debits and the credits equal the credits. The easiest thing to do now is to just grab this corner, or you can copy and paste, Control or Command C, Control or Command V, all the way down until you get to retained earnings. Don't paste it into retained earnings because that's going to have additional closing journal entries. Okay, now if you want to remind yourself that you should not have any closing entries for these permanent accounts, just fill them in. Okay, I'm going to fill them in black because kind of grade them out, right? All right, so for retained earnings, you're going to have a closing entry that closes out your dividends account. Okay, you are also going to have a closing entry that closes out your income summary account to retained earnings. You are going to have two amounts for that. So whatever you have in your adjusted trial balance, okay, whether it's a debit or credit, whatever you have in your closing entries, the debit and the credit, you need to combine those to get one single number, debit or credit, for your post-closing trial balance. And I'm going to tell you right now, as one more check figure, you should have 157,418, okay, is a credit amount. All right, do not net or subtract these two numbers from each other and just give me one number. All right, otherwise your columns won't be in balance. You need to put the debit and the credit in separately. Now for everything here, sales, dividends, everything down here, if you have an adjusted trial balance that is a debit balance, you are going to have a closing entry that is a credit for that same amount. So you could right now make your credits equal to your adjusted trial balance debits. You can make your debits equal to your adjusted trial balance credits. All right, that is going to work for everything from dividends down to utilities expense. Okay, and there are no numbers in here yet, but once you get these adjustments filled in and complete your adjusted trial balance, now this will automatically fill in. Again, everything from dividends to utilities expense, we are going to close those accounts out, and they are going to be zero when we are done. So you will not have anything in the debit or credit column for those on your post-closing trial balance. The income summary, you also will not have anything in your post-closing trial balance, but notice you have 3 lines here. Okay, you will have multiple transactions. You will have 3 transactions on your closing entries that impact your income summary, and you need to list each of those separately. All right, so you can't do the trick where you just make it equal to your adjusted trial balance because you are closing all of these other accounts using that income summary, and then the net amount goes to retained earnings. All right, so if these are the accounts that we're closing, if we look at the closing entries, the first closing entry is to close the revenue and the contra revenue accounts. Well, if you go to your trial balance, the revenue, sales, right, sales revenue, and contra revenue accounts are right here. So if you are crediting and debiting these accounts in your closing entries, right, you're going to have the account name, you're going to have the dollar amount, and in your closing entries, you can always just use an equal sign and link to these. I mean, you can also copy them. All right, so your sales, you should have a debit for your contra revenue account, sales discounts and allowances, those have closing entries that are going to be a credit. Okay, so we're going to put a credit in each of those. Now I promise you that your debit for sales is greater than your credits for sales discounts and sales returns and allowances. And that's where that page 102 of your textbook, the closing process, that's where that income summary account comes in. Okay, so whatever is left, right, your debit minus your credits, whatever needs to come in so that your debits in total equal your credits in total is going to be that income summary amount. You can do the same thing on your expense accounts, but again, page 102, that income summary debit is going to be the total of all your credits. Everybody keeps leaving out cost of goods sold. Okay, don't do that. Your entries are going to be everything from cost of goods sold down through the expenses, which if you take a look at the trial balance, all of the other names say expenses. And you can copy these and paste them in, or you can, right, you can copy, come right over here, to closing entries. You can paste those in, or you can link them in, okay? And then you're going to pick up those credit amounts. I gave you this next one as a check figure on the announcement yesterday. The dividends, you're going to close that to retained earnings, and just make sure that you get those journal entries recorded to your closing entries like we talked about. All right. For your balance sheet, for your statement of shareholders' equity, for your income statement, these are going to equal what is on your trial balance for that same line item in your adjusted trial balance column, except for retained earnings. That's going to be from your post-closing retained earnings, okay? Statement of shareholders' equity, well, you can see this one, right? But you got to get your net income in here, and you've got to get your dividends paid in here, okay, for both of these line items to get that to work. For your balance sheet, you've got all those on your post-closing trial balance, and you can get those entered in. You can use last year's formulas to help you out. Just watch out for supplies, for unearned revenue, for common stock, for a couple of ones where you might see that it's missing from the prior year. All right, I hope this helped. I know some of you may be still working through the adjusting entries, but by putting these formulas in, you can very quickly get the last quarter of the case done in a much faster time. So I hope for those of you still working, you found this helpful. For those of you I talked to earlier, I tried to share this as you went through it. Some of you had it already and I didn't have to. But again, I hope this video was helpful for those of you still trying to get through tonight.